Imagine an immortal robotic army that has already conquered death. I mean, they don't want your land.
Right.
They don't want your resources. In fact, they don't even want their own bodies anymore.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. They basically want to vaporize themselves into pure, permanent beams of light. And, they are willing to just burn the entire galaxy down to get the energy to do it. So, welcome to the Nephrekh Dynasty.
Yeah, diving into the stack of notes you brought us today, this faction is, well, they're just a complete anomaly.
Oh, absolutely. Usually when we dig into the 41st millennium with you guys, we expect a very specific kind of grim, dark reality.
Yeah, the classic rusting empires, desperate fights for survival in the mud.
Exactly. Or like tragic quest to reclaim lost humanity and flesh and blood. It's always about everything breaking down. Everyone is just fighting against entropy.
But the research you compiled on the Nephrekh, it just throws an entire paradigm right out the airlock.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are looking at a society of ancient, metallic, undead aliens, right? The Necrons. And their ultimate ambition is, honestly, it's almost beautiful on the surface.
On the surface, sure. But the closer we examine the physics and the psychology of what they're actually doing, it becomes deeply, deeply terrifying.
Yeah, beautiful but horrifying. It's a lot.
It is the absolute definition of a gleaming golden obsession that's just masking a profound psychological rot.
Wow.
Yeah. And to understand the sheer scale of their ambition, we really have to establish a baseline of what a standard Necron is. Because the Nephrekh are, they're rebelling against their own species' fundamental nature.
Right, because they didn't start out as metal skeletons.
Yeah.
There's a whole tragic backstory here.
Exactly. The foundational tragedy of the entire Necron race is this event called biotransference. So millions of years ago, they were a biological species called the Necrontyr.
And their home planet was just awful, right? Like highly irradiated.
Oh, brutally irradiated. They lived on a world incredibly close to a violent star, so their lifespans were just agonizingly short. I mean, they were plagued by cancers, radiation sickness, constantly.
Just a completely miserable existence from birth.
Yeah. So in their desperation for immortality, they made a really catastrophic pact with these ancient cosmic entities known as the Cetan.
The star gods.
Right, the star gods. And the Cetan basically provided the technology to transfer the consciousness of the entire Necrontyr race into bodies made of living metal, a material called necrodermis.
But it wasn't a clean upload, was it? Because the notes you provided emphasized that they actually lost their souls in this process.
That is the crucial detail here. The biotransference process utilized these massive, terrifying biofurnaces.
Ugh, sounds lovely.
Yeah, not great. The flesh of the Necrontyr was essentially burned away, and their minds were mapped into these engrammatic pathways within mechanical brains.
So they basically digitized their brains.
Sort of, but the Cetan actually fed on the spiritual essence, the actual souls of the entire race during this process.
Oh, man. So they just ate their souls while giving them the metal bodies.
Exactly. It was a complete trick. So the Necrons woke up in these immortal metallic bodies, completely devoid of their souls. And worse, they were subjected to these highly restrictive command protocols.
Right, the ones that basically stripped free will from, like, the vast majority of their population.
Yeah, essentially turning most of them into automatons. And after fighting this massive galactic war, they went into hibernation, a great sleep that lasted for 60 million years.
60 million years, just hitting the snooze button for eons.
Pretty much. And now that they are finally waking up, the standard goal for almost every Necron dynasty is to figure out how to reverse that biotransference.
They want their bodies back.
Right. They want to find a biological vessel, transfer their minds back, and, feel the wind, taste food, be truly alive again. They are a race totally consumed by nostalgia and regret.
Which, I mean, makes the notes you gave us on the Nephrekh Dynasty so incredibly jarring. Because the Nephrekh look at that standard Necron goal wanting flesh and blood back, and they completely reject it.
Utterly reject it.
Yeah, they don't want to be squishy, vulnerable mortals ever again.
Yeah.
But they also don't want to stay in their necrodermis bodies, which is the weird part.
Right. They've decided they want to transcend matter entirely. They want to become living light.
And I'm just trying to wrap my head around the environmental factors that lead to this specific divergence. Like, why does this one specific group look at the prospect of regaining their humanity or, biological equivalent and say, nah, I'd rather be a laser beam?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it really comes down to astrography. Geography shapes destiny, even in space.
Okay, how so?
In a galactic setting, the literal physical location of your empire fundamentally alters your cultural evolution. The texts you sent over explicitly point out that the Nephrekh dynasty was forged in the energy-rich core of the
The
galaxy.
core, okay.
Yeah, and we need to think about what the galactic core actually is. It's not like the quiet, relatively empty spiral arms where a star system like ours sits.
Right, it's not peaceful.
Not at all. The galactic core is a place of unimaginable stellar density. You have supermassive black holes, neutron stars, pulsars.
Just a constant light show of terrifying cosmic events.
Exactly. Hyperdense star clusters packed together in this chaotic gravitational dance. The ambient cosmic radiation and just raw, unrestrained energy in that environment is staggering.
So they're just swimming in energy all the time.
Yeah. When your empire is built in the most energetic cauldron in the galaxy, surrounded by the blinding light of millions of closely packed stars, it completely warps your perspective.
It changes what you value.
Exactly. It changes what power and perfection actually look like to you.
So they aren't looking down at the dirt of terrestrial planets like a lot of other empires. They are literally looking up into the heart of blazing fusion reactions.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the standard Necron goal of returning to biology is inherently backward-looking, right?
Yeah, it's grounded in a longing for a past that honestly was actually quite miserable. Like we said, they had super cancer.
Right. But the Nephrekh are rejecting that nostalgia. They recognize that biology is fragile. It's susceptible to disease, radiation, time.
It decays.
It decays. But they also recognize that their current necrodermis forms, while technically immortal, are cold, unfeeling, and completely stagnant.
So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. So by choosing to pursue a transformation into pure energy, into light, they are making this profound psychological choice. They are abandoning both their painful past and their sterile present.
They're aiming for a radical, completely uncharted future. Like they're stepping into the absolute unknown here.
Stepping into a state of being that has literally never been achieved by any sentient race in the history of the galaxy.
But I mean, stepping into the unknown requires an entirely new set of tools. You can't just, wish yourself into a photon.
No, you definitely need some heavy hardware for that.
Yeah. And the text mentions their scientists, known as cryptics, which, by the way, is an incredibly evocative term for a technosorcerer, have developed processes categorized as hyperalchemy.
Hyperalchemy, yeah.
And the goal of this is to channel stellar energy to facilitate this transformation. But before we get into the application of this, we really need to clarify the mechanics.
Sure.
What exactly does hyperalchemy mean in this context? Because, alchemy usually makes us think of medieval guys trying to turn lead into gold in a basement.
Right, guys with vials and old scrolls. But the term hyperalchemy in this setting is essentially the manipulation of the fundamental laws of physics to such a degree that it just appears magical.
Okay, so it's science that looks like magic.
Exactly. Standard Necron technology already treats the laws of thermodynamics and gravity as mere suggestions. But the Nephrekh cryptics are operating on a totally different level.
How much higher can you go?
Well, they aren't just building machines. They are actively transmuting matter and energy at a subatomic level and
Wow.
doing it on a massive scale.
Wow. So they really are doing alchemy just at a quantum level.
Yeah, they are taking that ancient mystical concept of transmutation and executing it through hyper-advanced quantum mechanics and dimensional engineering.
And the crowning achievement of this hyperalchemy, at least according to the research, is the creation of a living skin of something called metagold for their nobility.
The metagold. This is where it gets really strange.
Yeah, because this metagold allows the bearer to temporarily transform their entire necrodermis body into a state of living light.
Just phasing right out of standard physical reality.
Right. They can phase through solid matter, they can bypass kinetic attacks, and essentially become totally weightless and frictionless.
It's an incredible tactical advantage.
But I need to stop here because the mechanism of this is just baffling to me. How do you funnel the chaotic, raging power of a star into a metallic skeleton without just instantly vaporizing it? Like, it makes no sense.
It's tough to visualize. But think of their metagold skin like the heat shielding on a spacecraft, but operating in reverse and scaled up to just a cosmic degree.
Go ahead, in reverse. Explain that.
Well, a spacecraft's heat shield is designed to ablate and dissipate external thermal energy, right? To protect the delicate interior from the outside.
Right, from burning up on re-entry.
The metagold skin acts as a localized, hyperdense containment field, basically a dimensional mirror, if you will.
The dimensional mirror.
Yeah, it traps a miniature, highly controlled fusion reaction, or basically a stellar energy state, inside the framework of the Necron's skeletal structure.
So the star's on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The metagold prevents the energy from radiating outward and completely destroying the physical shell. But simultaneously, it allows the physical mass of the necrodermis to temporarily translate into a wave state.
A wave state. So they're literally becoming light waves.
Right. It blurs that fundamental line between particle and wave. It allows the necron to exist as both matter and light simultaneously, and it's controlled entirely by the engrammatic will of the noble.
That is, I mean, that's mind-blowing.
I see.
But wait, I'm struggling with the logic of the behavioral response to this technology.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, we've established that the Necrons are soulless machines, right? They gave up their biology. But the text mentions the Nephrekh nobles spending, quote, sleepless nights pursuing a permanent transformation.
Yes, it describes their pursuit as a blinding obsession.
Yeah, they're constantly chasing this temporary state of being light. So how can a purely mechanical brain experience psychological addiction or, agonizing withdrawal?
That is a phenomenal question.
Like, wouldn't a metallic logic circuit simply calculate that the metagold transformation is a useful, albeit temporary, tactical advantage, and then just power down to conserve energy?
You would think so.
Yeah, where is this emotional, almost desperate compulsion coming from in what is essentially a machine?
That cuts to the very heart of what a necron actually is. Because, we call them machines, but they are not computers in the way we understand them today.
They're not just running Windows 10.
Definitely not. Their brains are engrammatic. When biotransference happened, the CTAN didn't just write a software program that mimicked a necrontier.
Okay.
They fundamentally mapped the exact neural pathways, the chemical dependencies, and the psychological flaws of biological brains into physical architecture within the necrodermis.
Oh, wow. So they kept all the baggage.
All of it. This means their minds still simulate biological responses.
Ah, I see.
So when a Nephrekh noble activates the metagold and becomes light, their engrammatic brain registers this massive influx of sensory data that they haven't felt in 60 million years.
They're feeling something again.
Yes, they feel a sensation akin to warmth. They feel weightlessness, a sudden freedom from the crushing, cold sensory deprivation of their metal bodies.
So it's essentially simulated dopamine hit, but run through a quantum supercomputer.
Exactly. It's a digital high. And because it's a simulation, it creates a very real feedback loop in their logic circuits.
Right, what goes up must come down.
Yeah, when the metagold runs out of charge or the hyperochemical reaction stabilizes, they snap back into that cold, heavy, restrictive metal cage.
Ouch. The ultimate crash.
And the sudden absence of that sensory input registers in their engrammatic architecture as a critical system failure.
Like an error code.
A profound error state that their simulated consciousness literally interprets as agonizing withdrawal.
That's horrifying. So they don't have organic neurotransmitters, but their hardware degrades and their software corrupts over time from this.
Exactly. It forces them to relentlessly seek out the one state of being where their internal diagnostics stop flashing red.
They are addicts.
They are. But the addiction is hard-coded into the actual architecture of their synthetic consciousness.
That makes the reality of their existence so much darker. They aren't just, scientists pushing boundaries. They're junkies trying to fix a permanent error code in their own minds.
It's a tragic compulsion.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when you are that desperate for a fix, the amount of energy you need is astronomical.
Staggering amounts of energy.
Which naturally brings us to how they actually wage war. Because funneling the power of a star to chase a temporary high requires an unthinkable amount of raw energy. You can't just synthesize that in a laboratory.
No, you have to go out and harvest it.
Right. And that desperate need for stellar energy completely dictates their military doctrine and their application of this golden form on the battlefield.
Yeah, the golden form is really just the militarized application of their addiction.
They're taking their drug to war.
Exactly. They don't just use this technology to feel weightless in their palaces. They weaponize it to secure more resources, more planets, and ultimately more energy to fuel the hyperalchemy.
And the sources outline how this fundamentally alters their movement. Like, standard Necron infantry usually marches forward in this slow, inevitable Terminator-style phalanx, right?
It's a wall of relentless metal.
But the Nephrekh activate the metagold traces within their bodies and use what are called translocation beams. They stutter across the battlefield at terrifying speeds.
It completely changes how they fight.
So how exactly does translocation bypass standard physical movement? Like, what is actually happening there?
Well, translocation isn't just fast running. It's a complete circumvention of real space physics.
Okay, so they aren't just sprinting.
No. When they activate these beams, the metagold skin allows the Necron to slip out of the material universe entirely into a parallel microdimension or a localized hyperspace conduit just for a fraction of a second.
Oh, wow. So they are leaving our reality.
Yes, they essentially fold the space between point A and point B, translate themselves into a beam of light or energy, travel through that folded space, and rematerialize.
That sounds terrifying to fight against.
It is. To an opposing army, it looks like a nightmarish stuttering effect.
Like a glitch in the Matrix.
Exactly. A Nephrekh warrior is standing 100 yards away, there's a flash of blinding golden light, and instantly that warrior is standing directly in front of you.
They just bypassed your barricades, your trench lines, and your armor. Just boom, right there.
Completely bypassing all conventional defenses.
But the movement is only half of the terror. The notes focus heavily on their weaponry, and this is where the logistics absolutely shatter my mind.
The weaponry is on a whole other level.
It is. The research states that their standard weaponry, and particularly their massive doomsday weapons, draw power from actual captive suns striking with the fury of a star.
It's almost hard to comprehend.
You cannot just put a star in a gun. I mean, how do they capture a sun, and how do they weaponize it without destroying themselves in the process?
To understand this, we really have to look at the peak of Necron technological capability, which are dimensional tesseracts.
Tesseracts. Okay, I know that word from sci-fi, but what is it here?
A tesseract, in this lore, is a technology that manipulates the very fabric of reality to create a pocket dimension.
Like a bag of holding.
Basically, yeah. A localized gravity well that is larger on the inside than it is on the outside, and it's completely divorced from the physical laws of the surrounding universe.
Okay, so they make a magical science box.
Right. And the Nephrekh cryptechs have mastered the ability to deploy massive tesseract arrays around a living star.
Around a whole star.
Yes. They essentially fold the fabric of space-time around the star, compressing it and shunting it into one of these pocket dimensions.
So they're walking around with a Dyson sphere compressed into the size of a battery pack.
That's a highly accurate way to visualize it, actually.
It is absurd.
It is. They have captive, raging stars trapped in microdimensions, and they tap into these pocket dimensions to draw raw solar plasma and fusion energy directly into their weapon systems.
So when a Nephrekh warrior fires their weapon, they aren't shooting a conventional laser.
No, or a plasma bolt generated by some chemical reaction.
They are opening a microscopic aperture into that pocket dimension and literally venting a fraction of a captive star's fury directly at their target.
Exactly. It's concentrated solar fury.
Imagine being an ordinary human soldier in the Imperium facing this. You know, you set up your defenses, waiting for a conventional assault.
Standard trenches and bunkers.
Yeah. And instead, a metallic skeleton glows blindingly bright, vanishes, phases directly through the reinforced concrete wall of your bunker, and then shoots you with a localized solar flare.
It's unwinnable for a regular soldier.
It completely invalidates conventional warfare.
Yeah.
You can't hold a line against an enemy that exists in a state of quantum superposition and wields the literal heat of a star.
You really can't. And that forces us to look at the psychological warfare aspect of this doctrine.
Right, because there's a message here.
Definitely. Wielding captive suns isn't just about raw firepower. There are far more efficient ways to kill an enemy in this universe.
Like what?
Biological weapons, kinetic bombardment, localized black holes. The Necrons have all of that.
Right, they have a whole arsenal of world-ending stuff.
So why go through the incredibly dangerous and complex process of capturing a sun to power your guns?
It has to be symbolic.
Exactly. Because every weapon discharge is a theological statement.
A theological statement. I like that phrasing.
If living light is their ultimate goal, their form of perfection, then they are utilizing the raw material of their ambition to obliterate their enemies.
They are enforcing their worldview on the galaxy one blinding flash at a time.
Proving their mastery over the very thing they wish to become.
It's just a terrifying flex. They are literally weaponizing their own religious iconography.
It's hubris on a galactic scale.
But managing pocket dimensions containing active stars, organizing an entire society around a collective hyperalchemical addiction, and executing complex translocation combat doctrines that requires absolute precision.
Utter precision.
It requires a unified, perfectly stable command structure, which brings us to the profound tragedy at the core of the Nephrekh dynasty. Because the leader of this faction possesses neither precision nor a stable mind.
Not at all. And this is where the gleaming facade of the Nephrekh completely falls apart, revealing the rot underneath.
It's all gold on the outside, rust on the inside.
Precisely. To understand the current state of their leadership, we have to revisit the concept of the Great Sleep.
Okay, the 60 million year nap.
Right. The notes you brought us mention that the entire Necron race hibernated in deep underground stasis tombs for all that time.
Yeah.
And when Pharaoh Silphek, the supreme ruler of the Nephrekh Dynasty, awoke from this sleep, his sanity was utterly gone.
Just completely shattered.
Yes. He woke up believing that he was a literal celestial deity, a sun god.
But, how does a machine go insane while it's turned off? Like, if I leave my laptop in a closet for a year, it might have a dead battery, but its operating system doesn't suddenly think it's a toaster.
That's a funny way to put it, but the laptop analogy is helpful. However, we have to scale it to millions of years and introduce cosmic radiation.
Radiation again. It always comes back to that for them.
Always. Remember, their brains are engrammatic physical structures holding simulated consciousness. Over 60 million years, the stasis crypts weren't perfect.
Things shifted, broke down.
Right, tectonic shifts occurred. But more importantly, cosmic radiation slowly bombarded these tombs. On a microscopic level, high-energy particles would occasionally strike the physical engrammatic pathways of the sleeping necrons.
Just tiny little microscopic hits.
Exactly. In computing, this is known as a single-event upset or a bit flip.
A bit flip, where 0 becomes a 1.
Exactly, where 0 becomes a 1 purely due to radiation.
So millions of years of random cosmic bit flipping slowly corrupted their hard drives.
That's exactly what happened. It's hardware degradation leading to severe software corruption.
Wow.
For a standard Necron warrior, a bit flip might mean they wake up slightly slower, or maybe their targeting reticle is permanently offset by a millimeter.
Annoying, but not world-ending.
Right. But a Pharaon possesses the most complex, highly advanced engrammatic brain in the dynasty. It contains vast archives of personality, memory, and strategic processing.
So there's way more data to get corrupted.
Yes. When Silphek's complex pathways were bombarded by radiation for eons, the delicate balance of his simulated ego just fractured.
He didn't just lose data. His brain tried to fill in the blanks.
Exactly. His logic circuits tried to repair the corrupted data by drawing connections that didn't exist. So he awoke surrounded by the technology of hyperalchemy, looking at bodies coated in metagold, and his corrupted processor concluded, "I am not a machine. I am the light itself. I am a god."
And his specific madness didn't just manifest as grandiosity, right? It manifested as crippling paranoia.
Extreme paranoia.
He sees usurpers in every single shadow. But here is the piece of the puzzle I really need you to explain.
What's that?
If the guy with the biggest red button in the galaxy is clearly experiencing a critical software failure, why do the lesser nobles follow him?
It's a logical question.
Right. If the CEO of a company becomes completely detached from reality, the board of directors removes him. Why doesn't a rational, calculating Necron noble just override Silphek and take control of the captive sons?
Because they can't.
They can't.
They literally cannot. And this goes back to the absolute horror of biotransference.
The command protocol.
Yes. When the Cetan built the Necrons, they hardwired unbreakable hierarchical command protocols into every single necrodermis body.
So it's not just a suggestion, it's physical law for them.
A lesser noble literally cannot disobey a direct command from their pharaon. The engrammatic pathways governing loyalty are physically inscribed into their processors at a level they cannot access or alter.
Oh my God. So they're trapped in bodies that are physically compelled to obey a madman.
It's terrifying. They are fully conscious, highly intelligent beings, forced to watch their leader make irrational, paranoid decisions, and they can't do anything but comply.
That is a nightmare scenario of cascading paranoia.
It really is. Silphek believes everyone is plotting against him, so he orders brutal purges of anyone who hesitates or fails.
And lesser nobles, knowing they are physically incapable of rebelling, also know that Silphek's paranoia doesn't actually require evidence to order an execution.
Exactly. He'll kill them on a whim.
So to survive, the lesser nobles have to prove their loyalty by being even more zealous, even more violent.
Yes, they actively purge their own underlings just to demonstrate their devotion to the sun god.
So the madness just flows downward, infecting the entire society. It is a culture governed entirely by terror.
Complete, inescapable terror. And we see the practical results of that terror in the history of their crown world, Ariand.
Ariand, right. The notes detail how fiercely contested this star system was.
It was a massive war zone.
While the Nephrekh were vulnerable or sleeping, Ariand was actually claimed by the Imperium of Man, right? which is a sprawling galactic war machine.
Yes, the Imperium moved in.
And it was also fought over by the Altamore Dynasty, a rival Necron faction.
A very powerful rival faction.
And most notably, it was defended against the Dark Angels, who were among the most elite, secretive, and heavily armed space marines in the universe.
The Dark Angels are formidable.
They are genetically engineered super soldiers who do not experience fear and do not retreat. Yet somehow, Nephrekh reclaimed Ariand and held it against all of them.
He did.
How does a paranoid madman defeat such rational, entrenched military powers?
Because a rational military commander fights for strategic objectives, and they retreat when the mathematical probability of victory drops below an acceptable threshold.
They do math. They care about logistics.
Right. A rational commander cares about supply lines, troop morale, preserving assets. Farron Nephrekh cares about absolutely none of that.
He just wants to win.
He is a madman who believes his divine throne is threatened by literal shadows. He does not calculate acceptable losses.
So if the Dark Angels establish a fortified beachhead,
Nephrekh will not initiate a tactical flanking maneuver. He will throw 10,000 stuttering, phasing, star-shooting warriors directly into the meat grinder.
just a wall of light and death.
He will order his ships to vent the raw plasma of captive suns directly onto his own cities if it means burning out the invaders.
Wow. He'll destroy his own stuff just to get them.
Yes, the hyper-violence of the Nephrekh is ruthlessly effective precisely because it is irrational.
You can't predict crazy.
Exactly. Fear of their Pharaon pushes the Necron forces to execute suicidal, devastating tactics that our rational enemies simply cannot anticipate or defend against.
They win because they are willing to basically break the board rather than lose a piece.
That's a great way to put it. Break the board.
But when you operate at that level of hyperviolence and you broadcast your mastery over stellar energy across the galaxy, you become a beacon, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You shine incredibly brightly in a very dark universe.
Mm.
And that brightness inevitably attracts the attention of forces that operate outside the bounds of rational warfare.
Which brings us to the external threat that perfectly mirrors their internal madness.
Right, so the notes highlight a massive conflict following an event called the Great Rift.
A cataclysmic event.
Yeah, which essentially tore the galaxy in half and spilled the chaotic energy of the warp into real space. And since then, the Nephrekh have been engaged in brutal wars with warbands of the Thousand Suns.
Thousand Suns. This is where things get really weird.
Yeah, for context for you listening, the Thousand Suns are space marines who fell to chaos. They became incredibly learned, corrupted, psychic sorcerers.
Very powerful magic users.
But they aren't fighting the Nephrekh for territory or to conquer Arion. They're fighting them for their secrets.
They want the knowledge.
Specifically, they want to understand how the Nephrekh managed to enslave entities known as the C'tan.
The very gods that cursed them.
And this is where the irony of the Nephrekh ambition hits its absolute peak. Let me just make sure I understand the sequence of events correctly.
Okay, go ahead.
The Nephrekh want to become pure energy.
Yes.
But to get the power to do this, to fuel their meta-gold and their sun weapons, they had to enslave the C'tan, the very ancient star gods that originally cursed them with metal bodies in the first place.
That is correct. They shackled the very cosmic entities that stole their souls.
That is incredible. But how do you enslave a god? The notes mention C'tan shards, but what is the actual mechanism of capturing a being of pure stellar energy?
It was an act of supreme betrayal and just unmatched technological mastery at the end of the war in heaven.
Okay, set the scene for us.
The Necrons realized the C'tan had completely deceived them with biotransference. But they couldn't kill the C'tan entirely because they were fundamental components of the universe's reality.
Like trying to kill gravity.
Exactly. You can't just delete them. So, using weapons focused from the energies of the living universe itself, they shattered the C'tan into thousands of fragments.
They blew them into pieces.
Yes. Then, they constructed specialized Tesseract labyrinth, similar to the pocket dimensions they used to capture suns, but infinitely more complex and lined with necrodermis energy siphons.
So a super prison for a god fragment.
Exactly. They forced these shattered fragments of the gods into these labyrinthine prisons, and now they use these C'tan shards as living, suffering batteries to power their most devastating technologies.
So it's like building a nuclear reactor, but the uranium is fully conscious, remembers being a god, and absolutely hates you.
That is a staggeringly accurate visual, yes.
And now, the Thousand Suns, these chaos sorcerers who manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer psychic will, are swarming the Nephrekh.
They want that tech.
The notes use a brilliant phrase saying the sorcerers are drawn to the dynasty's power, like moths to a beautiful, deadly flame.
Such a great line.
But why does an army of powerful magic users care about the technological schematics of a robotic race? Don't they just use magic to solve their problems?
You'd think so, but this conflict brilliantly blurs the line between magic and sufficiently advanced technology.
Okay, how so?
Well, the Thousand Sons are scholars of the esoteric. They delve into the warp, they commune with demons, and they cast spells that can literally burn worlds.
Right, they have all the magic they could want.
But they recognize that the warp is chaotic. It's inherently dangerous to the user. When they look at the Nephrekh, they see a faction that has achieved godlike power, phasing through reality, channeling stars, enslaving cosmic entities, but doing it entirely within the physical laws of the material universe.
Oh, so they are doing magic without the unpredictable risks of warp magic.
Exactly. The sorcerers want to steal the hyperalchemy because it represents a controlled, stable form of reality manipulation.
That makes total sense. And there's a profound parallel between these two factions, isn't there? Because the Thousand Sons suffer their own form of bodily transmutation.
Yes, the rubric of Ahriman.
Tell us about that.
To save their legion from flesh-changing mutations caused by the warp, a powerful spell was cast. But it backfired, inadvertently turning the bodies of most Thousand Sons Marines into dust, sealing their souls inside their power armor.
So you literally have an army of ghostly dust trapped inside suits of magical armor, fighting an army of engrammatic minds trapped inside skeletons of living metal.
It is a phenomenal mirror. Both factions gave up their biological forms.
Both are obsessed with arcane knowledge.
And both are entirely trapped by the consequences of their own pursuit of perfection.
It's so poetic in a really dark way.
The Thousand Sons are attacking the Nephrekh because they see a reflection of their own tragic existence, but one that has somehow mastered the physical universe in a way the sorcerers have only achieved in the immaterial warp.
And the metaphor of the moths to a beautiful, deadly flame is incredibly poignant here.
It really is.
The Nephrekh spent all these sleepless nights, all this agonizing hyperalchemical research, just trying to shine in the darkness. They wanted to be beautiful, weightless light.
And they succeeded.
They succeeded so well that they turned their entire empire into a literal bug zapper for the most predatory, learned sorcerers in the galaxy.
Their obsession with transcending reality literally summoned the worst elements of reality right to their doorstep.
They are completely surrounded by enemies of their own making. I mean, inside their empire, they're tearing themselves apart with paranoia over who controls the light.
And outside their empire, they are being torn apart by sorcerers who want to steal the light.
Which really forces us to look at the ultimate tragic truth of the Nephrekh dynasty.
It's the core of it all.
Yeah, we've spent all this time breaking down the mechanics of their doomsday weapons, the tragedy of the bit-flipped madness, the hyperviolence, and the captive sons.
All the flashy stuff.
But the research points toward a much more philosophical conclusion. The true horror of this faction isn't their cruelty, and it isn't their firepower.
No, it's not.
It is their self-destructive ambition. Their quest for absolute perfection has become a mental prison that guarantees their damnation.
This is where we must really synthesize the physical mechanics and the psychological trauma we've discussed, because the Nephrekh present a horrifying paradox that redefines how we view power in this setting.
Because there is a deeply relatable core to this alien story, right?
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean for us? Looking at this from an outsider's perspective, we all understand the concept of chasing a goal.
We all have ambitions.
We obsess over career milestones, creative visions, or, idealized versions of our lives. We push ourselves, sometimes to our own detriment.
We lose sleep over it.
But the Nephrekh force us to ask a terrifying question. At what exact point does ambition stop being the engine that propels you forward and start being the very prison that guarantees you will never be free?
That is the paradox, the contrast between their physical state and their mental state.
Break that down for us.
Well, physically, the golden form represents the absolute pinnacle of freedom. When a Nephrekh noble activates the metagold, they are unbound by the fundamental forces of the universe.
Gravity holds no sway over them.
Solid matter cannot impede them. Kinetic energy just passes right through them. Through translocation, they are the most physically liberated beings on any battlefield. They can exist anywhere, instantly.
They have achieved total physical emancipation.
Yet mentally, they are experiencing absolute crushing lockdown.
The withdrawal.
Yes, their engrammatic minds are entirely imprisoned by the artificial withdrawal of their addiction. They cannot experience joy in their achievements.
They can't even celebrate a victory.
No, because they cannot build healthy alliances within their own court. Silphick's cascaded paranoia forces them to view every single interaction as a potential assassination plot.
So they have ultimate power, but they are entirely alone and terrified.
They are slaves to the very light they so desperately wield. They are completely paralyzed by the fear of losing that temporary high.
It is the tragedy of demanding a utopian dream from a universe built on entropy. I mean, they rejected their flesh because it was painful and weak.
Right.
And now they're rejecting their metal because it is cold and stagnant. They demand to be pure light. But as the text notes, this glory may be forever beyond their grasp.
By refusing to accept the reality of their existence, they have damned themselves to an eternity of furious, paranoid dissatisfaction.
They are, as the notes so perfectly call them, the maddened princes of the stars.
It is a breathtaking execution of grim, dark philosophy. The setting takes the concepts of hope, ascension, and beauty, and it weaponizes them against the characters.
The pursuit of perfection doesn't elevate the Nephrekh. It hollows them out, leaving only fear and hyperviolence.
Exactly.
Well, looking back over the stack of research you dropped on the table today, this has just been an incredible journey.
It's a dense one for sure.
We started by examining a fundamental rejection of reality, a society that refused to accept the cold truth of their metal bodies or the nostalgic weakness of biology.
We broke down the staggering mechanics of hyperalchemy, understanding how the metagold acts as a localized containment field.
Right, creating that highly addictive, simulated sensory fix for their engrammatic minds.
And we analyzed the sheer logistical terror of their combat doctrine.
Replacing slow phalanxes with translocation beams and weaponizing dimensional tesseracts to fire the raw fury of captive stars.
Just unbelievable firepower.
We delved into the tragedy of the Great Sleep, exploring how millions of years of cosmic radiation induced a hardware degradation that manifested as the god delusion of Pharaon Silphick.
And how his cascading paranoia turned their crown world of Ariand into an irrational meat grinder.
And we saw how that blinding, beautiful ambition acted as a beacon, drawing the magical parasitic attention of the Thousand Suns.
Revealing the deep, ironic parallels between engrams in metal and dust in armor.
It all culminates in the realization that their quest for living light is nothing more than a gilded, inescapable prison.
But before we conclude this deep dive, there is one final, lingering thought that emerges from the physics of their ambition.
Okay, I love these.
A concept that builds on the lore, but takes their ultimate goal to its logical, terrifying conclusion.
Lay it on us. What is the final piece of the puzzle?
Well, the Nephrekh spend these sleepless, agonized nights trying to make their transformation into pure light permanent.
Right, they want to shed the heavy necrodermis architecture forever.
But consider the fundamental nature of physics. Energy has no structure. A beam of light has no architecture.
Okay.
It has no neural pathways, no engrams, and no physical medium to encode data, hold memories, or maintain a distinct personality.
Oh, wow.
If Pharaon Silphick and his cryptex actually achieve the impossible, if they finally solve the hyperalchemical equation to sever their connection to matter and become pure, permanent light, how would they retain their consciousness?
They wouldn't. Without the physical necrodermis brain to hold the software of their minds, the simulation just ends.
Exactly. Therefore, is their beautiful golden ambition actually just an elaborate, highly technical form of mass suicide?
Oh my God.
When they finally ascend, they won't become immortal gods ruling the cosmos. They will simply scatter to the cosmic winds, dissipating into the endless void as meaningless radiation.
Permanently erasing themselves from existence and entirely forgetting they ever existed at all.
The ultimate ascension is actually just ultimate erasure.
They are working tirelessly to build the instrument of their own absolute oblivion. That is a heavy, incredible thought to chew on.
It really reframes everything they are doing.
The research you brought us today on the Nephrekh Dynasty is an absolute masterclass in how technological supremacy and absolute ambition can just curdle into the most profound madness.
It's a warning wrapped in sci-fi.
Keep bringing us these strange, terrifying corners of the universe, and we will keep unpacking the mechanics and the madness right here with you. Until next time.